The real thing that put all my weight on, my biggest addiction my whole life has been soda. It was absolutely soda. I would drink 12, 18 cans of soda a day since I can remember. That's what did it all for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely to get down the liquid calories that have basically no satiety at all. It's just, I would say that's probably a requirement to get that big. And so because I want to just, the times you did lose 200 pounds and the times you said you lost 300 pounds, what were you doing then? You said just not eating? I just stopped eating completely?
Just every time, like not eating or eating very little. And I was basically like I didn't know these terms at the time, but I was either doing OMAD or I was like the biggest one I ever lost. I got down to 337 pounds. That's the lightest I've ever been in my adult life. And that was a 17-month diet where I ate twice a week, and each time it'd be below 1,000 calories. So I was eating 2,000 calories a week, and I did that for 17 months. And every time I'd resort to not eating because it was easier than calorie restricting. And little did I know, I think I was just in fasted ketosis, and that's why it was easier back then. It was easier to fast than it was to eat crappy food in small portions. It was just, I don't know what it was, but it was always just easier for me not to eat.
Yeah, that makes sense. And a lot of us who've done some period of fasting will find that once you're in it, I'm not that hungry, but the second you put something in your mouth, it's like the gates broke open. So you got down to 330-ish pounds, lowest you've been in your adult life. Why did you put it back on? What happened?
Yeah, very simple. I just started eating again. So first it started, I remember I was playing softball and doing a bunch of stuff back then. And first I tore my rotator cuff. I was getting real weak too. And I think had I known about electrolytes back then, I think things would have been a lot different too. I think not taking any electrolytes for that 17 months, I think that's what was causing, because I started getting real dizzy. I started getting weak. I started getting headaches. I started getting just fatigue and stuff. And I was stressed out and irritable. I didn't know why all these things were going on. And also I got married about that time, and my wife can't not eat anymore. So she decided she was going to follow the nutritionist guideline and that they'd set what I'd been dealing with, and she was going to make it. And I was going to be way more strict on this stuff. And she was going to cook rice and pasta and whole grain pasta and all this stuff. And man, the weight came back on so fast. It was insane.
Why?
And I gained back.
Why do you think the weight was coming on so fast? Did you just become voraciously hungry again, or what was going on?
I was hungry again. And so I was always trying to control what would happen every time that I would eat anything that had carbs in it. And I didn't know this at the time, was my soda addiction was through the roof. And in my head, I didn't have any energy through the day if I was eating anything like pasta or rice or whatever, even a little bit. I wouldn't get any energy out of it. But when I was not eating, I had some decent energy. But if I started eating rice, I had to drink 2 iced coffees in the morning to get to work. And I had to have a couple of Red Bulls at 10 o'clock. And then I'd have soda till 3. We didn't actually eat that much food we had appetites and we could really eat, but we really only ate one meal a day. We wouldn't eat breakfast when I was a kid, but it was always the soda. We were always drinking soda.
So and probably soda made up the majority of the calories in your day then, it sounds like.
Yeah, it really did.
So were you working continuously this whole time through the weight peak and back down, up and down? Or?
I started to decline. So when I was 18, I was working on this job site, and I breathed in a bunch of spray and Corbon insulation when I was working there, and it did something to my lungs when I was 18. They diagnosed me with reactive airway disease. And after that, I would just get pneumonia and bronchitis like every winter without fail. And since I was 18, my oxygen saturation was like 88% or below. And I was always having trouble with that. And that kind of became an ongoing condition that would just get worse throughout my life. And so I got moved into the office, I guess it was about 2014. And I started doing bids and billing and stuff and admin work and designs in the office. And that didn't help because I got more sedentary. And then we went through a real rough time in our family. My wife left, my brother died, and my dad died 11 days apart. Oh, wow. So it was just kind of a real terrible time around 2016 through 2017. And I was pretty depressed and everything was going on and my health was declining. I was just in the ICU for 3 days because they had to put me on 12 liters of oxygen because I was having some sort of lung. They never would tell me what it was. They said basically you have reactive airway disease and you're having like an asthma attack and your lungs are closing off. And they'd have to give me nebulizers and put me on huge amounts of oxygen. The only reason why I was in the ICU is because the regular rooms didn't go up to 12 liters of oxygen. That's what it took to get me into the 90% oxygen saturation. That was what had happened. And after all that, I started working from home because now I was working on a computer and I was trying at this point to get after I got out of the ICU, I decided I was drinking no more calories ever again because I just noticed that when I drink all that soda, my lung condition was way worse. And so I would always be shorter of breath and I was having like more asthma-like attacks. So I just was trying to figure out anything I could do. And that was the first thing that made sense. And it was what I knew was probably causing most of my weight problems anyhow. So I just decided I wasn't going to drink any calories. And that was pretty miserable. And of course I substituted it with diet soda and all this junk too. But I kept that off for a year. And then I was ready to do something else because I'd lost a little bit of weight at the time. I don't even really remember how much, but it wasn't significant, but I did breathe better. And then my brother was reading Frank Zane's book. I don't know if you know who he is, but Bodybuilder.
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so my brother John was into weightlifting and I was like, I'm looking for a diet. And I was just done with dietitians and doctors. And John was like, do this bodybuilder diet with me. It's high protein, low fat, and moderate carbohydrates. So that was what got me on that path. And I did that for 14 months. And that was by far the most miserable I think I'd ever felt. I don't know why, but I'd never been more. I'm sure it had to do with my dad and brother passing away and all the things going on, but I had never been more depressed and more miserable in my life. But I was just, something had to change because life was in a bad spot at that time. So I just stuck on it, but I knew after 14 months, I'd lost 37 pounds was all.
So let me just interrupt you again. Sorry about that. But you said you're on this bodybuilder diet. It's high protein and low fat, and I'm sure some decent amount of carbohydrates. What did that diet look like for you on a day-to-day?
Same 2 meals every day. So in the morning, I would eat those cartons of egg whites. I'd use a couple of cups of egg whites, and I would make turkey sausage, low-fat turkey sausage, and egg whites in the morning, and I'd cover it with some mustard. And then I would eat, that would be, when I say morning, around 10 o'clock, because I hated eating first thing in the morning. And then for dinner, it was always brown rice, chicken breasts, and then I would take low-fat Greek yogurt and a chocolate protein powder and mix it together and make a protein yogurt. And that was the same thing, same two things I'd ate every day for 14 months solid.
And you hated it and felt miserable and you were depressed.
Yeah, I couldn't sleep. I had to peel myself out of bed in the morning, couldn't sleep, and just most depressed, like suicidally depressed I'd ever been in my life.
Wow. Yeah, that would be consistent with the protein energy restricted diet that some people are advocating right now. Okay, at what point, I guess there's a carnivore punchline to this at some point. At what point did you decide, I'm going to do this silly carnivore thing that these crazy wacko people are doing? Yeah, we hear it all the time how crazy we are. But at what point did you decide that was going to be the path you wanted to try?
So right after that 14-month deal, I did the steaks when I was learning to sous vide cook. That put me in ketosis. I Googled, why am I feeling good on ribeye steak seared in butter? And it brought up the keto diet. And I'd never even heard of it. I'd heard of Atkins at the time, but I'd never heard of keto or carnivore or any of that stuff.
What year is this? What year is this out of curiosity?
This is 2019. Basically.
Okay. 2019. Yep. Because keto had been around a while and been popular even back then, but you hadn't heard of it yet. Okay, go ahead.
No, I hadn't heard of it. I remember I Googled it and I got this guy, Dr. Darren Schmidt out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. He's got a YouTube channel. He was talking about candidus and keto.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this was awesome. And had I just kept doing what I was doing, eating the ribeyes and the butter, I would have been fine. But I went down the keto trail for 2 or 3 years, and it turned into, I can make all the crappy foods that I'm eating in a keto version and eat it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that just took me down several years of chaffles and fat bombs and bulletproof coffees and all these fathead dough pizzas and all this crap. And it just kept all the cravings alive. It was more effective, but not by much. And I could not get over the soda cravings. Those were keeping the soda cravings alive. And it was just driving me insane because I just didn't seem to be able to make I always don't think I was getting very deep into ketosis when I was in keto because I was eating all the junk. And I couldn't get any kind of energy out of it. It was just crazy.
And so you said it helped a little bit, but you're making all the keto fake foods, and it's a very easy trap to fall into. You go in the store and there's all these keto products, which are mostly garbage. And weight loss during that period, did you lose 50 pounds?
At that time I had gained weight because I was sedentary. So I just kept hovering between 575 and like 625 pounds. Like I just kept going back and forth, and I'd fall off the wagon and I gain it back, and I can gain 50 pounds in a short period of time for me at that rate. Yeah. And so I just kept going up and down. And then I read Jason Fung's book, The Diabetes Code, about the insulin fasted set point and how he calls it like the thermostat for your body mass. And I decided, it said in that book that the only way to get your fasted insulin set point down was to do long fasting. And at this time I was already pretty much OMED, which was an easy transition. Like I said, we didn't actually eat that much. We drank stuff. But I decided that being that I kept failing this keto and I was getting sicker and sicker, which I'll go into, but I decided I was going to do a 40-day water fast. And so I started this 40-day water fast, and I made it to day 21, and I wasn't taking electrolytes, and I was drinking so much water that I guess I got way low on potassium, is what the doctor said. Okay. And they said that I gotten low enough on potassium that I didn't understand any of it, but he said that it lowered something in my blood plasma, which made my red blood cell count go down from being low on potassium.
And this is all locally at like a local Bozeman hospital? Is this where you're doing all your healthcare? Okay.
Yep. And so they said they had to give me potassium, and they said I needed to get my potassium up, and my red blood cells were going to come up, and they were going to check that. But during that time from going in and getting checked and stuff, I got COVID right then. Yeah. And I guess I probably wasn't in great shape, being that my potassium was low or something, but I got hit with COVID, and it was way bad. I got super bad pneumonia. I was just on my back, and I had a fever for 13, 14 days. And I was coughing up these bloody little clotty chunks out of my lungs for 13, 14 days. And I avoided going into the hospital because I didn't quite agree with I was nervous about I think it's called remdesivir or whatever their treatment was. But the biggest problem was a friend of mine, Ryan, had gotten COVID 1 week before I did. And he was same age as me and super healthy. And he went into the hospital with the pneumonia, and the treatment that I didn't really agree with, they gave it to him. And within 17 hours, he had passed away. Oh my gosh.
Sorry to hear that. How old are you at this point when you
38.
38. Okay. So this is okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was 38 going on 39. I got COVID and didn't go in. We ended up doing ivermectin and stuff at home, and I was doing a nebulizer, and I was just doing some naturopath stuff that my sister had read about for COVID that she had treated her and her husband with. And so I did that, and so that was good, but it scarred up my lungs, and I ended up getting congestive heart failure from it. And that was when I started gaining fluid like crazy, and I got lymphedema. And my calf swelled up to 35 inches in diameter. And this is why I don't know really how much I weighed, because my weight went through the moon. I know that when I went into the hospital, they were measuring how much I was peeing out when I was in the hospital after that for 11 days. And in that 11 days they had removed 64 pounds in that 11 days. And I was still, I can't remember what they said. I was still 690 some pounds. And that was when I went into the hospital. I had worked on getting my fluid down for 5 months on my own before I even went into the hospital and got fluid pills. So I don't really know what my my top weight was. It would fluctuate crazy.
So it sounds like if because they're weighing you on a bed scale probably, and they had you at 690 and they pull 60 pounds, it was you're probably 750 plus pounds. So that's quite a bit. And okay, so you're in the hospital, you got COVID, lungs get scarred up, you're not in good shape. Where do you decide, hey, I'm going to do this carnivore thing? Where does that come in at?
They sent me home with oxygen. That was actually a game changer because my lungs had always been bad. And I started taking oxygen, which allowed me to sleep a little bit, because before I kept waking up gasping for air and I was sleeping. But at this time I was stuck during that time between just before I got in COVID and I wasn't feeling good till I finally got on Carnivore. I'd been stuck in a recliner chair, pretty much lived there 24/7 for over almost 2.5 years at that point. I was stuck in this stupid chair and my world had become a 12-foot square area. I was still working from home, but my computer was over here to the right. And I had to get a mini fridge and have it over here to the left. And I had these little Ninja air fryers, and I was just doing everything in this little 12-foot space. And it was all I could do to get to the bathroom once or twice a day. I couldn't stand up for 90 seconds. And I was just everything. One, I couldn't breathe, and two, my legs wouldn't hold me, and my legs were getting so huge. I decided I was going to do keto one more time. And this was September 28th of 2022. I decided I was going to do keto one more time. But this time I had watched enough videos and listened to enough things. I was like, it was basically Ketovore. It was carnivore plus carnivorous vegetables, olive oil. And basically what I was making was taco salads. And so I started doing that. But this time I'd gotten one of those blood ketone. You prick your finger and read your blood ketones. And I think it said that you're supposed to be between 1 and 5. And I kept being at 0.08. I was just under the bottom end of ketosis. And so I started eliminating things. I started eliminating cheese from the taco salad. And then I started eliminating salsa and hot sauce that I had on there, a little bit of salsa and hot sauce. Yeah, I got it down to where I finally crossed over the 1 mark on the meter, but that was ground hamburger with no seasoning in it and green carnivorous lettuce. And I was like, this is a crock. I hate lettuce. So I took the lettuce out and I just said, I'm going carnivore. And so on January 1st of 2020, the last thing I had in my diet that wasn't BBB and E was black pepper. And I took that out on January 1st, 2023. And that all was a game changer.
Let me interrupt you there before you. There's a recent movie came out. Brendan Fraser played a character called The Whale. And I don't know if you've seen that, but very similar. Confined to basically one room, almost impossible to get up out of the chair, tremendous effort just to get back and forth to the bathroom, the toilet yourself. You're basically living that same life. Did you have somebody assisting you? Did you have somebody that could help you with some things? Or how did you survive in this situation? I can imagine how hard it is.
So I actually, when my dad and brother passed away, they were living with my mom. And that was when they passed away. My mom was by herself for the first time ever in her life, because she married my dad when she's like 17. And I just gotten divorced like 8 months earlier. I was the one. So I moved in with her to help try to take care of her, which is funny. And then my health went even worse straight to heck. So mom was helping me a little bit, but she has Parkinson's and she's got a brain tumor and she's got spinal stenosis, and she's got a lot of her problems. So that wasn't really a thing. But my sister would come over every few days and help me out. And then we had a lady that we hired that would come in and help clean and grocery shop for us every 2 days, or twice a week is what she would do. So I set up this world right around me. And that's where I just worked from. But I was sitting here watching mom struggle inside, trying to help mom, but I really couldn't even get out of this chair at this point. This was why I did things like go on a 40-day fast. I was getting desperate and things had to come to a head. And I was really, after COVID, every day that I would fall asleep, I wasn't sure if I was going to wake up. I can't even begin to tell you what kind of death I felt and looked like. I
can just imagine you're confined effectively to a recliner for all of your existence, but a very few short time. And you're in a 40-day fast, just sitting there. What are you thinking about? What's going through your mind? I'm just not eating. I'm just sitting here almost, not barely alive. I would almost describe that as almost barely being alive. How hard was that mentally for you?
It was the mental thing's always been a thing. Like I didn't realize until depression and anxiety went away that it was actually like a chemical diet thing. I just thought that the depression was because my life sucked. Like I thought that it was situational, and I thought, well, of course, I'm depressed and full of anxiety. This sucks. So I always fought that. But at the time, I was just Christian. I was reading my Bible. I was praying. I was like, look, I don't care if I die. I'd assume not be here than be in this spot. But if I'm going to live, I got to get on top of this, and something's got to give. So I was just all in it at the time. And I was used to being hungry and miserable and out of energy. So none of that was new. That had been like a lifelong thing. But I just was tired of being on the fence. I didn't know if I was going to die or live. I didn't know if I was going to fight or give up. And so I just threw it all in. I was like, if I die, fine, but at least I'm going to go out fighting instead of giving up. And so I just threw it all in there. And that's why I was doing some dramatic things, trying anything, because I'm all the little things. And obviously I'm not good at moderation or whatever, never have been in my life. So I was doing these big things like the fast because I was looking probably for a magic pill or an easy fix. I was just trying to make something better. So I don't know. I really couldn't tell you that it was that not eating for that 21 days was any different than any other day. It was just a different kind of suck, really. They've been prescribing me prescription medication. They prescribed me all this stuff for depression and anxiety when I was younger too. But there's just always something in me. I didn't even like taking aspirin. There's just something in me. I did not want to get on drugs. One of the things was one of the gout flare-ups I had when I was 18. They gave me some Vicodin for it.